Hello and welcome back to Chapter 1. So let's move on. Just don't forget that I'm going to ask you to take a couple of notes and on a separate sheet of paper and submit that as homework. All right, so here's a good example of the P1 24-pin power connector for the ATX motherboards. This is typical. Most ATX motherboards will have this power connector coming onto the motherboard. So it's probably a good idea to find out, to know all the pins, especially if you need to use the multimeter to see if there's enough power being supplied to the motherboard. So this is a good reference to always keep in hand. Um, and by the way, as you can see this little notch in there, it's going to make sure that you plug this in correctly. So if you try to plug this in and it's not fitting, don't force it. That means you're doing it wrong. All right, here's a typical PCIe enhanced video card. Okay, moving on. So these are just some typical video cards that you need to plug in. Here's a micro ATX motherboard. Okay, small for the mini towers. Pretty much the same thing. It's a little bit more less real estate that you can see. Pretty much the same power. The pin locations may be a little bit different. You just need to find out exactly where they are located. The manufacturers or the vendor should provide you with all the schematics that you need about where all the pins are, pinouts for the power supplies and for the power connectors and everything else that you need to know. All right, when you are removing the screws on the expansion slot, again, just remove only what you need. Don't remove any of those covers that you don't need because that will allow dust to go in. Remember the fans and the that are running inside. They want to make sure they are to keep all the chips that are inside the motherboard cool, and you don't want any dust accumulating on top of these chips, making it even hotter. All right, when you are removing the card, toggle it, shake it a little bit, never touch the chips, and keep your hands on the metal. And don't forget that you should definitely have your wristband already connected, right, to a piece of metal. You have to be grounded. Okay, so these are different 5 leads that connects to the motherboard as well. Again, before you remove anything, by the way, make sure you take pictures. I highly recommend that you do that. It's always best to do that. So this way, when you are putting things back, you're not going to forget where everything goes and, label them. Nowadays, if you have your phone, it's probably the easiest way to go. Okay. Moving forward. Removing the motherboard itself. Again, try your best not to touch the motherboard. There are screws and little legs on the top of the tower, on the bottom of the motherboard to make sure that the motherboard doesn't touch the metal. Right, so make sure you unscrew these. Here is the coin battery. This is for an older BIOS chip for the motherboard. Okay, if you remove this battery, then all the BIOS configurations most likely will be deleted. One of the reasons you probably want to remove it is because there's a password on the BIOS and you want that to be erased. So you move that, let it sit for a while, and then all the information on the BIOS chip will be deleted. Or if the battery is dead, of course, you want to change that. Okay, this is the post power on self-test code meter, master diagnostic. So what you do is if there's some hardware problem on the motherboard, you plug this in, turn your computer on, and watch for a code. And from that code, you can pinpoint where the problem might be. All right, so here's the first thing I want you to write. A postcard, I want you to write this sentence right here. Okay, because they do exist, and this should be part of your toolbox. Although a lot of operating systems or a lot of computers, a lot of BIOS will let you know what the problem is. All right, so just write the first sentence up there as part of your notes. Okay, removing the power supply. Just go pretty much the same thing. You can use either a multimeter or this power supply tester to make sure that it's supplying the correct power. Why do we need a power supply, by the way? Is because we are getting AC power, alternating current from the wall outlet. Our power supply converts the power into DC, direct current, because all the components inside the motherboard and hard drives, DVDs, you name it, they all want DC power. They do not work on AC. So that's why that power supply is there, is to convert the AC that's coming from the wall to DC. But sometimes they go bad. So, this is one way of testing them to make sure that they are supplying the correct power. One thing to me, you can double check when you turn the power on. If you don't hear the fan running on the power supply, that means you're not getting power into the motherboard. That's a sign that the power supply is bad immediately. If you touch this metal and you see it's hot, that means it's being overloaded. Unplug it immediately, because there's a very good chance you may harm, the components in the PC. All right, here's a multimeter that you can use. Okay, this is for the ground, this is for the power, and you can either put it on AC power if you can check the wall outlets to see if there's power. DC is to look on the other side of the power supply to make sure what's coming out of the power supply is DC and what it's supposed to be. Typically, it's 12 volts or 5 volts plus or minus on the other side, DC power. What's coming out from the wall outlet should be between 110 and 120 AC power, AC voltage. So maybe the wall outlet is not giving that power. So you test that. If there is power coming out of the wall outlet, then you check to see if the power supply is putting out DC power or not. So you check on the other side of the power supply. All right. Hard drives, usually they get their power cord, the power that comes from the power supply, and their cable that connects to the motherboard, the serial ATA cable. Okay, then you have to, it's easy to remove drives. Just make sure that they're unscrewed. Click on the clips, right? This is for the DVDs. This is the front panel. I think they're pretty straightforward. Make sure that you push down on these clips to slide the removable bags. Again, make sure you cover everything that is not being used to not allow any of the dust or the heat to come in, right? And there's your clips for the DVDs. Okay, now supply. All right, here's another documentation from the front panel. Okay, that's pretty straight. This is just for the front. So the connectors, you got to watch out for the connectors, what connects to the front ports. Okay, so now let's get into laptops. So sometimes everybody's familiar with laptops. They come in different flavors. The ports are typically on the sides, right? So you may have wireless NICs, okay? Even though most of them are integrated, sometimes you want to have an additional wireless NIC. Some of them may need an Ethernet port. My laptop doesn't have an Ethernet. I have to purchase one like that, and that's the actual chips in there. So it's not just, so that's an actual NIC, right? Keyboard backlights, sometimes the light bulbs lights up. Most keyboards have that. Some laptops will flip and turn into a pad, touchpad. So these are sometimes good, especially the ones that flip, because even if liquid is spilled on them, you should be okay. They should be insulated. All right. You have the docking port, the sheet battery station. So this way, when you bring in your laptop to work, you can dock it and transfer all the data to the server if you need to. But let's get in there. Here is the port replicator. So if you have a lot of ports, you can use this connected to your laptop, and you're going to have it, you have a whole bunch of USB. You expanded your laptop to have all of these different ports connected to your laptops. That's something that you should be thinking about if your client needs additional ports. When it comes to the warranty, okay, so you make sure that the warranty applies for a certain, the warranty applies for a certain amount of time. So, and a lot of times what they do is they don't want you to open up, especially if you have, let's say, a 3-week warranty. Dell is famous for that. They want to make sure you don't open up your laptop or your desktop. And they'll tell you if you remove the label in any way, then you lose then you void the warranty. So be very careful when it comes to warranties. All right. And definitely if it may cost you, maybe 5 to 10% of the actual cost of the laptop, but I think it's worth it. That's something that you should definitely think about. All right. Manuals, keep manuals. This is the websites that you should always go to get your laptop and notebook, all-in manufacturers, all-in-one manufacturers. This is all the places that you need to go to, depending on what type of laptop you have for the service manual. All right. Now let's go into getting and working inside the laptop. These are the tools that you need. And I think one of the tools, all of these they might be a little bit different than the ones that you are using for the desktop because, we're working at a little bit tighter place, but you still definitely need, by the way, the wrist strap. That's very important. Okay. And try to use these tools while you are opening up your laptop and working inside. Try to minimize the use of your hands when you are doing it. All right. So wrist strap, you attach it maybe to anywhere. It doesn't have to be directly to the computer, by the way. If you have a piece of metal somewhere close to you, the desk or anywhere, but here's a place where you can attach your wristband to avoid the electrostatic discharge. All right. Follow the manual carefully. You may download that from the manufacturer's or the vendor website. All right. Be very careful when you are opening up the back. Sometimes when you want to change the screen, when you are unhooking these cables, they are very, very delicate. So gingerly, you want to make sure you take them out and use the tools that are provided with you. Very easy, very quick to change. It should not be that hard. All right, this is what is this? Remove the battery. Okay, so batteries are sometimes can die out and you need to change them. So I think it's pretty straightforward. The memory, again, when you are installing memory, pretty straightforward. Just make sure you don't touch the memory. Okay, so what I really want you to write are the four step. Remove and disable the battery that's step number 1. Step number 2, remove the hard drive, right? That's usually on the back. So is the battery. Step number 3, you remove the memory. So that's also you open it up from the back and you should be able to remove them depending on what type of memory you have. Then you remove the wireless card if you have one, not integrated part of the motherboard. Remove the optical drives, right? The DVDs if you do have one, of course. And then you can crack the case open. Now, when you crack the case open, you want to use the spludger, right? And try to do it. And if you don't have this piece, you can pry in it using maybe a flat head screwdriver, but try to go on all the sides and see if you can. Now, don't pop it all out because there's most likely there are going to be cables that are connected underneath. So remove the system board on step number 8 very carefully. Remember, you're writing these steps. So far we're up to 9. So 9 steps on how to open up your laptop. I want you to write those down. Okay, so And that's it. So I'll see you on the next chapter. Write down everything I told you